Mother's Day is this Sunday here in the U.S., and it'll be the first Mother's Day since my mom died in December. In this episode of the I Can't See You podcast, I'll tell you some stories from when I was growing up and some other stories about my mom that she might not be happy about, but are funny.
From Studio C, welcome to the I Can't See You podcast with David. He can't see, but he's got a lot to say and a face for radio.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 73 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I really appreciate you checking out this episode, and it is going to be a solo episode today. I know the last couple have been with guests, but I wanted to do a solo episode for Mother's Day and for my mom. This will be my first Mother's Day without her, and it is sad, but as I see what's going on with the virus around the country and around the world for that matter, it would have been so difficult to have her by herself in her room, not being able to visit her. And again, if you've listened for a while, you know that Liz and I would visit usually a couple times per week, especially as time wore on. And at the end, I was there almost every day. Some days with Liz picking me up or dropping me off. Other days, I Ubered out and Ubered back. And, I think about some of these folks who have loved ones in either skilled nursing facilities or nursing homes or whatever you want to call them. And I think how difficult that must be for the families not being able to get to their loved one who, may be in better shape than my mom was towards the end, but wondering if they understood what was going on. I know my mom probably would get what's happening, maybe not in the last month or two, but, it would have been tough, especially near the end. She had trouble holding the phone because of her arthritis, so it was difficult to talk to her on the phone. So it would have been hard to have to go out and visit with her, or not being able to go out and visit with her. We certainly wouldn't have been able to visit for her birthday like we were the year before. And there was something going on in that building then. So, we were fortunate that we got to spend it. It's funny as I think back to, how things went. And for the longest time, Radio 104.5 had these birthday shows where they were basically a one-day festival type of thing over in Camden at BB&T Pavilion. And for a few years in a row, they often came on Mother's Day, at least one of two shows. Some years they had two shows. One was on Mother's Day, and then one was a few weeks later. And then they finally all got shifted towards the end of May and into June. And it made it better. I always felt horrible going to the concert, wondering, hey, am I going to miss the last Mother's Day with my mom? And fortunately, I didn't. Last year, Mother's Day, we were able to spend it with my mom and visit with her and get her gifts. And I'm trying to remember what we got her last year, and I don't remember. Her go-to gifts were orchids, any kind of book from Barnes. Well, I shouldn't say any kind of book from Barnes & Noble. She loved and I'll put some links in the show notes page. She loved the murder mysteries. There was one called, I don't remember, it was like the Cupcake Murders or something like that. And it was all sorts of baked goods, the baked good murders, whatever they were called. It just made me laugh. And then, of course, in this paperback book, you got through it and the mystery was solved, and then there was a recipe for whatever it was called. If it was cupcakes, it had a recipe for a cupcake, or if it was cookies, it had the recipe for, the chocolate chip murders, it had a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. and she loved those things. And so that was usually what we got her. Years before, when she was still, going out and about, we would, she loved to wear the perfume called Beautiful, to the point where even before she was over at Maris Grove, when she used to babysit and our kids were little, especially Jacob, I remember this, for days, Jacob would smell like Beautiful because my mom would hold him and, would be on him. Liz would change him and everything else. And still he he smelled like that. So it was kind of funny. But and again, in earlier times, when she and my dad were out there, Talbot's was a place we would get her gifts from. But her main loves were reading. She loved taking care of plants. She had, before she moved over to Rose Court at Maris Grove, where when they lived independently and in another section, she had plants in every room, and mostly orchids, but all sorts of plants. And, she was great with them. And fortunately, I got that from her. I can keep plants alive for quite a while. And I have to mention that over these last 7 or 8 weeks, with everybody being home and my schedule being so confusing, not because my schedule is different, but because everybody is home and Jane's got Zoom calls, several a day usually, and Liz is teaching via Zoom. And so my days are a little funny because of that. So I've had trouble remembering when to water the plants. Did I water them on Friday or was it Wednesday? And just in case you want to remind me, this week I watered them on Wednesday. I'm recording this on Wednesday, the 6th of May. Hopefully I'll remember next week on Wednesday, and there won't be a lot of calls. And that's the other thing, because our living room and dining room and kitchen are in a wide open plan. When Jane is on a Zoom call, in fact, it happened today. Jane was on an internal Zoom call with some of her team, and Liz was teaching. And somebody on Jane's call said, "Hey, is somebody else on the line?" And she's like, "No, that's my mom teaching whatever Liz was teaching at the time." So it's kind of funny. And I asked Liz today because I really want to get this online, on TV. I asked her if she would kill me if I videoed her while she was either singing to the kids or reading to the kids or just teaching a kid, math or whatever. And again, Liz is a preschool teacher, so everybody can do the math she's doing. It's simple addition and subtraction. And in fact, I think it's mostly addition. So, but I think it would be fun to get her, especially singing, because, the kids really like it. And it's funny how there's a couple kids, especially, they don't want to get off the call when they have one-on-one time with Liz. They get sad, and it is very nice. So I just think it'd be fun to see that. All the things they show on one of the local newscasts here that I watch in the Philadelphia area on 6ABC, and. But she won't let me video her until she cleans the dining room table off, it really is a disaster. So I'll let you know when you have to look for that on Action News on 6ABC. But I think that would be funny. But, so with everything going on and, all sorts of noise and wondering when to water, my mom stayed on top of it when she had the plants at her house. In fact, for a year or two, from the time we moved, or actually before we moved, we took some plants over there, knowing that we didn't want to move them because one of the plants was given to us. Just made me sad. One of them was given to us by Chris Doherty and Doherty and Company Insurance. If you listen to the last episode, he had passed away back on the 22nd of April. Chris had given us the plant when Jane was born. Jane was born in 1997, and the plant is we had it repotted a couple years ago. Actually, I guess it's about 5 years ago now. And it's just growing like crazy. It's the people where we had it repotted were amazed that I kept it alive for so long in one of those little tiny baskets that it was in. And it was one of those plants where there's 3 or 4 different types of plants. And, there's like 2 or 3 inches of soil, and it's, like a square basket, maybe, 9 by 12 with a handle, and, one plant in the middle, one plant down either end, staggered. And, so that in our old house, we kept that in our master bathroom where we had some spots around our tub that got great sunlight and obviously the humidity in there from the showers was all, also great. But yeah, so that plant is 23 years old and change. I've also got a plant here that I think I mentioned that was given to Margaret when her daughter, our niece, Megan, was born. She turned 16 this year, so that one's also another pretty old one. So I'm keeping them going, but I'm a little concerned with, losing track of the days. And I know a lot of people are in that boat, especially, I never had a set schedule, but obviously Liz and Jane do. So, I can't start running around, running the water and making noise while either both of them or Jane is on a call, especially when Jane is on a call with clients. So it also has made, that aspect has made it difficult when trying to set up podcast interviews, because two of them can be on Zoom calls, but when you get three of us on it, there's definitely an issue with bandwidth. And I found out a few weeks ago when I was on a Zoom call, fortunately it wasn't a podcast interview, but I had a lot of difficulty because both Liz and Jane were on, and it just wasn't working. So with my mom and the plants, she loved them, but when she moved over, she gave some to friends at Maris Grove. She donated some to they have a gardening club there. So we took those over and donated some there. And, it's very cool how good she was at it. And she even had, in one of my dad's stores, he had a supermarket in Brookhaven. She had a little plant department that she took care of, and she loved doing that. And she was just good at it. And like I said, I'm glad that I inherited that from her, because as I've also mentioned, I've inherited the Hernandez tone that she has, and I'm assuming most of my family members on that side have also had or also have. As far as books go, my mom loved reading, and we took her to Barnes & Noble when she was still going out and about. That was the place she always wanted to go. She always wanted to go to Barnes & Noble. And before that, she wanted to go to Borders. Borders was right across the street from where she lived. So that was a nice, easy, we drove across the street. We went to Borders. And then we ate someplace usually pretty local, with her and my dad back while he was still alive. There were some restaurants close by there. They liked P.F. Chang's, although it was kind of noisy for them. And my mom still liked P.F. Chang's. Even we probably got her P.F. Chang's, within the last month or two before she died, because she loved the fried rice that we would get from there for her. And that was one of her go-to things. And, one of the, as I told Roy Samuelson a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that we have, and I don't know which side of the family it comes from. Again, I'm not going to blame it on the Hernandez side, but it happened after my dad was gone, and it happened to my mom. If we like a place or a TV show, there's a good chance it gets canceled. Now, my mom loved NCIS, and that is obviously still going, so that part is good. But she loved this Chinese place not too far from her, and it was nice because the seat was comfortable for her, and the service was great, and they took great care of us there. There was never a wait. And of course, because there was never a wait, it didn't last. It didn't survive. And sadly, with the way things are today, with the virus and everybody being closed for this extended period, I don't know how most places are going to survive. I just don't know. So, that part is sad. And, I feel fortunate that I didn't have a business that, like Salon Supplies and Interiors that we had, or the West Coast Video Store that we had. Neither of them, if the video store were still a thing, this would have been a great time for it if you could stay open. And maybe you could stay open by doing deliveries, kind of like DoorDash. But of course, there's a better delivery system now, and that's when you order via your cable system, or you watch on demand or whatever. So it's definitely better than, having to rent a physical item and then return that physical item. So, to be closed for 6 or 8 weeks, I just don't know how a business can survive. I have to apologize for my voice. It does sound like I am congested. I do have allergies, and I'm guessing that's what it is. Although, who knows? Maybe it could be, maybe it could be the virus. Again, the only way I would have that is most likely through Jacob bringing it home from Target where he works, and because that's the only time I leave the apartment is, when we pick him up. And sometimes I don't even go to pick him up or drop him off. But obviously if he comes in contact with it, so we'll see. I don't feel sick or anything. It's, again, I'm thinking it's allergies, but who knows? So books were one of the big things for my mom. And we would go, I think we went every week, unless she wasn't feeling well, or if she happened to buy a whole bunch the week before because she hadn't been in a while. She would probably read those paperback mystery ones. I want to say she could read them in a day or two. But as she got older, her vision started to get a little weird, and she had some trouble. As she used to say, they started printing the books smaller. And I would say to her, Mom, I don't think they're changing the font size. And she's like, what's a font? I said, the text, the lettering. Oh yeah, they're much smaller. Just like the newspaper has gotten much smaller. And, I think it was her eyes. And I don't think it was. It definitely was. But she loved reading, and she read other, mystery were her thing. That was her genre. She loved, and same thing with what she watched on TV, NCIS, Miss Fisher's Murders, which I don't know if it's out yet, but I know I mentioned this a week or so ago, or in the last few episodes. They were making a movie, and my mom talked about it all the time. She says, "When is it coming out? When is it coming out?" And I don't know if it's something that came out in the movies, or if it was going straight to TV, or what the story was. But I want to say I heard something about it within the last few weeks that it was either going to be on TV or going to be in the movies. I didn't hear the whole thing. And I thought, oh, how sad. She'd been waiting years for that since the show stopped airing. There were a certain number of shows that she would say, when is this coming on? When is it coming on again? There was one up that was, I think, Canadian, called Murdoch Mysteries or something like that. That's another one she loved. That's what kept her busy. She loved the mystery stuff. And it's kind of funny because Jane is kind of in that same boat. And again, Jane is very similar to my mom, which, she's got that tone bad, and she has that, she has that love for most of the things my mom had. And, and talking about the virus and my mom, when I was a kid, and we lived in Wallingford, and we had, I was around 10 years old, and we had in our family room, which they called a den. There was also it was a split level house. On that level, there was a laundry room, a powder room, and then this quote unquote den. And then there was a heater room, and then a garage. And when I was, again, around 10 years old, they took the garage and they made 2 rooms out of it. They made an office for my dad's stores. And again, my dad owned and operated supermarkets. He started in 1970 buying them. He actually started when my uncle had died, and he went and he helped my aunt run the store that they owned. And when I say, I guess you could call it a supermarket, but it was, by today's standards, it was pretty small. I want to say it was only probably about 10,000 square feet. I don't remember the exact number. It was at 52nd and Market. In Philadelphia, sorry. So that led to him buying that store and then buying some other stores. And most of the time, my dad would buy a store and basically flip it. Like people flip houses over the last, 10 or 20 years. He kind of did that to markets. He would take a market that a big chain had owned and then closed, fix it up a little bit, and emphasis on the little bit. Most of the time, depending on the market, it was, some new paint, some new shelving, and maybe some new graphics. I distinctly remember one of the stores he had. Sorry again for my voice. One of the stores he had, it was an Acme market, and Acme, which I'm not sure how big they are, but Acme in this area, their meat department was called Lancaster Brand. So above the meat section, it said Lancaster Brand Meats. So my dad took the lettering that was up there, and I don't remember if they were wooden letters. I don't remember what they were made of. But he took the letters and took it from Lancaster Brand, took all the letters down, flipped the L over, and I know he repainted all the letters that he reused, but changed it from Lancaster Brand Meats just to Fresh Meats. So that was his flipping. Now, there were some stores, the one in Brookhaven, for example, that had to be completely gutted because they hadn't been touched in years from the chains that own them. That store in Brookhaven had so many old, both their checkout systems and the shelving. I think they were old wooden shelves. I mean, everything had to be, everything was redone. New flooring had to be put down and everything else. So as my dad started in, and before he was an owner operator, he worked at a market in Chester called the Edgemont Beef Company. And he was the manager there for decades. And the people that owned that didn't want him to leave, but, he had to go help my aunt. And once he did that, I guess he got the confidence of running the business himself and doing it on his own. And that was, he was, I don't know, early 50s when he did that. So once he had these markets and they made that office, when they made that office, they made this big closet. And I want to say it was like 7 or 8 feet. It was a coat closet, but it also had shelving in it, and it had the folding doors, and each section of the folding door was between 1.5 feet and 2 feet wide. So just imagine that with the doors open all the way. Well, like I said, there was one bar that you could hang coats on, but the rest of it held, for lack of a better word, merchandise. My mom would say to my dad, all right, we're running low on paper towels. Bring a case home, not a couple. And again, as I mentioned in a previous episode, she was doing what the big boxes like Costco and BJ's do now, but a case of paper towels was more than what you could get, more than what you get at BJ's or Costco. Now it was, I don't remember how many rolls, but then basically that was my job, was to put the stuff away on the shelf. And I put it away like I was stocking a shelf in a grocery store. And it was just funny how we had that. And I could still hear my dad saying, Mom thinks we're going to run out of this. And well, you know what? Today, you don't know what you're going to get when you go to the market. And Liz and I were talking today that, she needed something. I know at one point she bought off-brand toilet paper because she didn't, she saw it there. This was, about a month ago. She wasn't sure she was going to be able to get any other kind, so she got it just in case. Unfortunately, we still have it, so that'll be our emergency backup for when we don't have whatever brand we use. I think we use Charmin. Yeah, we definitely use Charmin. Not that matters. So I just think of every time I see people lined up at the supermarket or lined up somewhere to buy groceries, I think of my mom, and I think of how, she always wanted a case of this and a case of that. And I think one of the reasons, and again, it was for stuff that we used a lot of, she wasn't getting a case of of something that we used maybe a can of. Like she wasn't getting a case of, we always had canned corn. She wasn't getting a case of canned corn. I mean, she did get a case of tuna fish. I guess the shelf life there is the reasoning, but veggies, I guess we didn't do. Fabric softener, Tide, although those Tide things were big. We used the big powder one that I don't know how much that weighed, a lot when I was a kid. Things like that. And it always makes me think when you see people with their carts full of these things that they're afraid they're not going to get, it always makes me think, my mom was well ahead of that. And I don't know if that's something that she grew up with in Tampa that she was able to get, at times they weren't able to buy. And so when they were able to buy it, they got more of, or they had enough money to buy it, because she didn't grow up in a wealthy family or anything. So I don't know what that comes from. There were two things with my mom with that. One was, stockpiling that stuff. And maybe some of it was when she needed something, if she realized she was out, like canned corn. She thought, oh, we'll have corn for dinner, because she knew I would eat that. I didn't eat a lot of veggies when I was little. Very different today, of course. She would call my dad up, Josh, when you come home, bring a can of corn. And she always knew that he was going to bring a dented can. And my dad always, of course, brought the dented can because, it was less likely to sell. And it always made my mom mad. And when they came out with, when I was a teenager, they came out with some story that when the can was dented, if a can was dented, sometimes bad things could happen to whatever was inside. And I don't remember what it was. Bacteria, I don't know, whatever it was. My dad lived to be 94. My mom lived to be 90. So whatever it was, it didn't hurt them. So maybe that was it. Maybe that's why she got the cases of stuff, because she didn't want damaged product coming home. So, and of course, when I see the lines at the supermarket, I always think of my dad. And, it's been, he always loved when there was the snow scare, as I've mentioned before. This snow scare has lasted about 8 weeks. And I just can't imagine how busy his stores would have been, now, and how difficult, how it would be, hey, I got to find this kind of product, or now I guess the thing to find is meat. There's not a lot of meat to be had. And so between the two of them, there's a lot of things on the news now that make me think of them. And, obviously, when you have, you think back to being a kid and you think of those days with, with them talking about stuff like that, the store and business and, us stockpiling stuff at home. And I mentioned a couple minutes ago, I had mentioned that was one thing my mom did. Another thing that my mom did, which I don't know if it drove my dad crazy, but he always thought it was funny. My mom emptied the trash from the trash cans probably every day. And I'm guessing maybe even more than once a day. I remember him telling me when he used to take me into, when I had the video store, he used to pick me up in the morning and take me in once we had kids. And, we'd talk about stuff on the way in. And I remember one morning we're driving over there, and he would drop me off at the store. And in the shopping center where the store was, there was a little deli, and there was a market next to us. Not that I don't think he would get stuff from there. It was his store in Brookhaven, but at this point it wasn't his store. He had sold it off. And actually, I guess when he was taking me in, I guess it was a furniture store by then. But he would go to the deli and get lunch meat, or maybe he needed something for the car down at Pep Boys down the other end of the shopping center. But I remember this one morning he's taking me in, and he was saying, the day before he was sitting at the desk writing checks, and he threw a tissue in the trash can that was in, next to his desk. His desk was in the bedroom. And it had that and maybe 2 other scraps of paper, paper that had stuff written on them and stuff like that. And my mom went over and took the trash out and took it and threw it away in the kitchen, which is the kitchen trash. I know it's like how it is here, is the one that gets emptied more frequently than any other. And, my dad said to her, you could let it fill up a little more. It's okay. No, it's okay. I was going downstairs. I'll do that always happened. There was never more than a couple of pieces of paper in there. And that was the other thing when I think back to, some of the things my mom did that I certainly didn't inherit that. I have looking at my trash can here in my office, an office. There's air quotes there because it's an office. It's also a utility closet. And that's why it says Studio C, because C stands for closet. One day I'll show everybody. I'll put a little video up on my quote unquote office /studio/ closet. Above me, there's some honey and what else is on the shelf? Oh, the Old Bay hot sauce and some tea bags for iced tea. All sorts of stuff in here. And and I guess it's quickly becoming the similar to the closet that we had over in Wallingford when I grew up with. There's no toilet paper or paper towels in here or Tide or anything like that. But maybe it's going to get to that at some point with the way things are going, and we'll have to see. But thinking about my mom with those and thinking about how I don't want to say that I'm happy that she's not living through this, but, obviously, when I see something on the news or when she used to love to watch, the daily numbers when they came up and, we'd talk about the numbers, and not that she played them often. She did like to play the lottery, like, Powerball and Mega Millions. We would get her tickets for that. And she loved going to the casino. She and my dad went a lot. And, once my dad died, she didn't go very often. I think maybe she went 2 or 3 times. She didn't like taking the bus. We offered to go down with her once Liz was out of school, and she just didn't want to do it. And, I think she missed that. I think she missed going down. I know one time she took the bus down from Maris Grove and didn't actually go into the casino. She went and she saw a friend of hers, and I'm guessing that was the last time they got together. She saw her friend Barbara, who lives down in Atlantic City. And I know she had a good day that day. I know that was, she enjoyed it. So, but she loved gambling. And it didn't, she loves gambling. I don't know if you've been watching TV lately, but it seems like most of the ads, if they're not promos for shows, they're promos for DraftKings and some of the other online betting places. And that makes me think of both my mom, but also if you've seen the National Lampoon's Vacation, it was the third one. No, I guess it's the fourth one, where the Vegas Vacation, it's called. Where they go to the quote unquote Indian casino where they have, where you could bet on rock, paper, scissors and stuff like that. And I think that's what it's going to come down to with some of these online gambling things. If, the sports world doesn't open up again soon. And, I don't know. We kind of do that all the time with, if we're watching Top Chef or if we're watching, anything that, I might hit pause on the DVR and say, what do you think is going to happen? Is this going to happen? That going to happen? That going to happen? We're constantly doing over-unders for things. And it's, we're not betting money. We're just, we're just for fun with, Liz and the kids. Honestly, it's mostly Liz, Jane, and I. Jacob's either usually at work as he is now or, off doing something else. But my mom, with my mom and gambling, she used to love those little handheld poker games. And, oh, my God, how she would go through the batteries in those. And she just loved them. And as the batteries on some of them would die, the machine would act a little weird. And she would get I have X number of thousands of coins or whatever. And, she just loved them. And when we were cleaning her place out, when she moved from her independent living place over at Maris Grove to Rose Court, I think there were 3 or 4 of them that, for whatever reason, they just stopped working. And I don't know why we didn't just throw them out or she didn't just throw them out. But yeah, I think there were 3 or 4 of them. So that was another thing that she loved. And it was just one of the things that she was comfortable doing, and she liked doing it, and it was something that she could hold. It wasn't too heavy. That was one thing, she loved reading, but as her arthritis got worse year over year, it became more difficult for her to hold a book, and for any kind of extended period, especially if it were a bigger book. The paperbacks, she didn't, the trouble she had with those was seeing them. But, a hardcover book, was heavy for her, and she just couldn't do it later on, or do it for a decent amount of time. And then, like with everything, she just, she stopped, we stopped getting those for her. It was just too difficult. We tried to get her using a Kindle or a Nook. I think we had a Nook for her. She just didn't like it. And, and I get it. There's some people, our former neighbor, Lisa, she just likes the feel of a book in her hands. I think Liz is kind of that way too, although she does read some things on the iPad, meaning books. I don't know how much lately, but because, again, she likes the physical book, I think, more than that. So, thinking of all those things and thinking, I know Barnes & Noble was in some tough straits before all this happened. Are they going to be able to come out of it and survive once everything starts to reopen? There's just so many questions there. And, thinking about my mom with what she liked, and, obviously, if we were buying books for her now, we'd obviously be getting them from Amazon or Barnes & Noble online and, and having them shipped to her. But towards the last 6 months of her life, I know my mom wasn't reading much, again, not being able to see it, and that frustrated her. And she was basically watching TV, whether NCIS on USA when they ran those marathons. She absolutely loved that. And and towards the end, she loved the Hallmark Channel and loved all the Christmas shows, and I thought that was funny. And the other day I walked into the living room and Jane had a Keeping Up with the Kardashians on, and I said, "What are you watching?" I said, "It sounds like..." I had gone into my mom's room probably within a month before she died, and she had, I guess Hallmark Channel has like a morning show, and it sounded like that. I said, and I told her, I said, "Jane, this sounds like something Mom was watching when I when I went over to her place one day during the day." And I said, "That was Hallmark Channel. What's this?" And then she said, "It's Kardashians." I'm like, "Oh, that's a little different," but it basically sounded the same. And I thought that was kind of funny. And again, Jane and my mom, very, very similar. So, but I hope that if you are a mother, I hope you're excited for Mother's Day this year, and I hope you have an enjoyable day. And obviously, everybody who has a mom still around, I hope you get to spend some time talking to them on the phone, because unless you live with them now, you're not going to go over and visit, I hope. That's one thing Liz mentioned to me the other day, that she'd just love to go over and just give her mom a hug, but that's one thing we don't want to do. We don't want to go into that house and again, because who knows what Jacob has been exposed to at Target, we don't want to take that in there and harm Felicia, also known as Grand Mère. So that's one thing. So we'll walk over there and, we'll wave through the window and she'll wave back. and that'll be the extent of it. We're not going to take anything over because we don't want them to take anything in. But I do hope you get to spend some time, whether it's via Zoom, if you're not close in proximity to your mom, and, or, telephone, Zoom, whatever. And I hope you get to, have an enjoyable chat with your mom on Mother's Day. And, for those of you like me that don't have a mom, just think back to all the, fun and happy times that you had with your mother as you grew up. And, we'll visit the cemetery too. We started this thing. Before I wrap this up, let me just mention this, which is kind of weird. We started this thing with Liz's dad. He died back in 2015, and we thought, what do we do? People take over things and leave them at the graveside. And, one of the people buried near him I think they had like an Eagles flag, and the guys who were in the military, they've got the American flag, and Liz's dad was in the military, but we don't have any of that stuff there. He loved, as I've mentioned before, Perkins Restaurant. Perkins is one of those chains where it's mostly, they'd like you to think of it as something else, as more of a bakery and a full-blown restaurant, and they want you to come in and eat dinner there. But everybody thinks of Perkins. They think of breakfast. Vincent or Grandpère loved Perkins and loved to get their pancakes and their eggs, and he loved the twin berry syrup. So on the first anniversary of his death, we went to Perkins in honor of him, and then Liz got a little thing of Perkins twin berry syrup, and we took it over and poured it on the grave. And since then, for Father's Day or for his birthday, we've taken something over. He loved fruit slices, also something that I love, and so we would take one and we'd leave it over there. And I don't know how long it takes. One of those those fruit slices. I'm not talking about real fruit. The candy that kind of was like a predecessor to like Sour Patch Kids or Gummy Bears. Looks like a half a slice of fruit. It comes in 5 or 6 different flavors, and so we would take one over and we'd leave one on his grave. And we've taken some other things. I know Liz has taken. He liked Hershey Kisses. We took those over. So we started doing that, and I started thinking, what are we going to take my mom for Mother's Day? And it's probably bad that we're doing it, but my mom loved sugar wafers, especially near the end. She had broken a tooth that she knew she wasn't going to get fixed. And the sugar wafers that we got, and I think we usually got them from Target, I'm not 100%, but they were very crunchy and very light, and she loved them, and it was easy for her to eat. So maybe we'll get a package of those and take them over. She also liked, and I think it's too early. I don't think they're out yet. She loved the Oreos that were s'mores that I dubbed S'moreos. They were her favorites of all of the Oreos and Oreo flavors. She also liked the mint, but she loved the Oreo, the S'moreos. She just loved those. And so when they came out, we used to buy extra packages so we, would have them. And again, the last 6 months to a year, maybe she wasn't eating as many of those as some of the people that would visit her or take care of her. I know June liked one of the flavors that we got for her, and I can't remember. I don't remember if it was like a cinnamony one, like churro or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but we would get that a lot. And I remember wow, Mom, you're really going through those. She's like, oh, I haven't had any of those. I said, well, where are they going? And she said, June is eating them. I said, oh, okay. She said, make sure you get more so she'll keep getting them. I said, okay. And so I don't know if you do any weird stuff like that, let me know. I can't see you podcast @gmail.com. You can certainly email me there. And again, I can't see you is spelled ICANTCU, 7 letters, sounds like a whole sentence. So I can't see you podcast @gmail.com, or better yet, call me on our line at 646-926-6350. Leave a message. You have up to 3 minutes to leave a message. And let me know if you've done that, or you can also let me know if you have any ideas for upcoming shows, if there's somebody you'd like me to have on as a guest. I do like the idea of having more guests on, and I've reached out to a couple of folks. So hopefully next week I have a guest, and you're not listening to me ramble on. But again, if you're celebrating Mother's Day and you're a mom, I know it's a tough job and there's no pay, but you are appreciated. And I don't know if I ever told my mom that. And if you're missing your mom, just like me, I know it's a tough time, but just think of her and think of the good times. And again, I appreciate you listening. This has been episode 73 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, @DavidBenge on all the socials. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast. Follow David on Twitter. He is @DavidBenge.